Think about the first time you told someone you loved them. What did you mean? Did you mean, I really like you? Did you mean, I hope we can spend the night together? Did you mean, I want to spend the rest of my life with you? I love surprises. I love surprises, like for gifts and birthdays and events. And the reason is, my mum always surprised me with the toy I most wanted on my birthday every year growing up. So when I met my wife, without explaining this to her, I expected her to know that, and she would never surprise me because it wasn't in her parental background. So I used to feel on my birthdays when we first met that she didn't love me. And I know this sounds crazy, but it's literally true. It's like I literally felt like she didn't care about me. But that's because I never understood why I like surprises, where that came from, and I never communicated that to her. Yeah. Does that make sense, Rangan?
Hey, more sense than you would know for sure. I mean, I can think back to my own relationship and think to all kinds of ways that actually, and I recently spoke to Esther Perel on the show and,
yes,
really sort of opened up about a lot of those things. And I think the thing I'm hearing from you telling that story, and when I think about my own relationship, it's that we often have expectations because we're used to things a certain way. So we think that's the norm. But of course, someone else has got their own idea of what is normal. And, we've explored this ourselves. And I think as your communication gets better, as you learn, as you said, to have a vocabulary around these things, as you learn to be able to articulate them, suddenly there's understanding on both sides. And a lot of that friction no longer arises because you can communicate. And I guess now your wife will go, Jay likes gifts, even though that's not my thing, for example. It's kind of like, maybe I'll get him a gift because that's how he experiences love.
My wife organized 2 surprise parties for me in the last 2 years. and she got me both times. Like she organized these 2 incredible, and that's what it is, Rangan. Like that's what it is that we're just, in every relationship, you have the ability to set the level of joy you expect and the level of pain you'll accept. But the problem is that we never tell the other person what that expectation and what that acceptance level is. And we never communicate that, and we expect them to be mind readers and expect them to know. And that's really where all of relationships go wrong with our parents, our children, our spouses, our partners, that there is no communication on what we expect and what we're willing to accept. And that creates so many issues that you then think you broke up over something big when actually you broke up over words and definitions. One of the ones I like to talk about is the definition of love. Think about the first time you said I love you to someone, Rangan. Like think about the first time you said it to someone, and everyone who's listening and watching, think about the first time you told someone you loved them. What did you mean? Did you mean, I really like you? Did you mean, I hope we can spend the night together? Did you mean, I want to spend the rest of my life with you? I'm guessing that you meant different things at different times. And now think about when someone says, I love you back to you. Have you ever asked them what they meant by that? Because chances are you projected your belief onto the word love even when someone said, I love you back. So if you said, I love you, and you were thinking, I want to spend the rest of my life with you, and that person said, I love you, you projected that they were saying they want to spend the rest of their lives with you as well. But actually what they were saying was they just want to spend the night with you. And now all of a sudden you're in this complete misalignment of values. And we end up in those scenarios because families define words differently. People define words differently. And different words mean different things to different people at different times. And so you really have to understand how that person described even being clean and tidy and organized. Everyone has a different definition. Like this, my room may seem clean to some people and my room may seem chaotic to some people because everyone has a different definition of what clean and chaotic is.
Yeah, very powerful. And, certainly the contentment that my wife and I feel in our relationship has improved dramatically since communication got better. And it was, really interesting one of the most amazing things since getting married has been getting to know my wife's family, who are just amazing, incredible. And the more time you spend with them, the more you understand how my wife has got her characteristics. You're like, oh, of course, that's how you've been brought up. I wasn't brought up like that, right? I had a completely different upbringing. So my idea of what is normal is completely different from yours. And if we both go through life in our own heads thinking this is normal, well, of course, there's going to be blow-ups and friction, because they both are normal, but they're different normals to different people. As you sort of talk about relationship, you reminded me of a moment in your book where you spoke about your relationship with your now wife when you first started dating her, and I think you took her out I think you saved up. Well, you can share that actually, what happened. And I'll tell you the reason why it made me stop and laugh is because it reminded me, although there were different scenarios, I remember when I first met my now wife, when I went out, when I was just dating her for a few months. I remember, so I'd played in bands for a few years, and at the time, one of my solo EPs was being sold in HMV in Manchester, and I had a couple of shows. And then when we first started dating, she came along, and then I can't remember when, but a few weeks or a few months into it, I said, hey babe, I've got the show tonight. Do you want to, do you fancy come along? And she's like, no, I'm good, thanks. I was like, oh no, you sure you don't want to come? She's like, yeah, I'm all right, actually. There's something on telly I want to watch tonight. Or something which was, for my ego at that time, back in the day, I was like, oh, why does she want to come? Does she not like me? It was really interesting. But I think that drew me more towards her, because I thought, I've never had that before. I think that made me more attracted to her. It's like, oh, she's not bothered about that stuff. And I actually genuinely would say now that's one of the best things about her, that kind of stuff. She does not give two hoots. She likes me and loves me for who I am underneath, and not for the kind of, not because, I'm on telly or I've, whatever with these books or whatever. She's not bothered about that stuff at all. And it's the best thing ever.
Yeah. And that's such a, it's such a blessing to have that in your life, Ranga, because, you meet people at different times, and people meet the love of their life at different times, and it can get really challenging. You reminded me of an interview that I think I referred to even in the book of Robert Downey Jr. And I think he's at Cambridge University, and they're doing a Q&A with him. And they're like, what does it feel like to be Iron Man and, be this incredible movie star in the Avengers? And he's like, yeah, when I come home and I open the door back from work, it's not like my kids in my family are like, oh my God, it's Iron Man. He's just like, my wife's like, can you take the trash out and, do you mind? And it's almost like that reality check. And yeah, for my wife, in similar what you were saying, for us, it was this understanding that I had believed that the romance that I saw in the movies was what romance and love was about. Because again, how many of us our beliefs are set by movies, media, and music? So many of our beliefs and what we expect in a relationship are based on a false show. And if you think about it, movies always end with happily ever after, where the wedding just happened. So it's almost like you see nothing after the wedding. And the funny thing is that after the wedding is exactly what life is about. That's where life actually starts. This life didn't start when you started dating, but movies end with happily ever after, and they don't tell the story. And so we all have this honeymoon, happily ever after version of love. And I had that too. So my first date with my wife, I thought, oh, she'll want to go to a fancy restaurant. She'll probably want to dress up. She'll want to do this, because that's what I thought from nowhere. She'd given me no indication of that. And so again, no checking of expectation, no checking of communication, just complete me on autopilot. And so I got this reservation at this fancy restaurant. I'll never forget the name. It's called Locanda Locatelli. And it's like this really posh restaurant in London. It's like David Beckham goes there and that kind of thing. And so I'd saved up to take my wife to this restaurant. And it was the worst date we've ever been on. And it was our first date. And she was just like, you could have walked me down Tesco's, the food aisle at Tesco's, and I would have been happier. She loves going shopping for food. So any sort of Tesco's or Whole Foods or Waitrose or whatever that, she loves it. And it was so interesting to me to think, I was like, well, I put all this effort in, and that's what happens. You start thinking, your ego goes, well, you put all this effort in. She doesn't appreciate it. And actually you realize, no, it's just, me speaking to her in a language she doesn't understand. Here are 3 signs you're struggling with a lack of purpose. Number 1, you feel pressure to know what you want to do with your life. Number 2, you've lost interest in your own life and feel disconnected. Number 3, you don't know what your skills are or you feel you lack them. Hope is not lost. You can get through this. Having purpose and meaning in our lives helps guide us through the ups and downs and create structure in our day-to-day life. That's why I've partnered with Calm, the leading app for mental health and wellness. The app has a library with thousands of meditations, songs to help you relax and focus, and sleep stories to help you get a good night's rest. And now you can find the Daily J, a daily series where I'm sharing proven tools and techniques to improve your mindset and mental health in a matter of minutes.